call came at 3:17 p.m. I still remember the way my pen froze midair, the sound of the second hand ticking behind me, louder than the voice on the phone. "Mr. Hale, your daughter never got on the bus." My throat closed. Never got on the bus. She always got on the bus. Every day, same seat, same wave through the window. The dispatcher kept talking, her tone shifting from calm to careful. The kind of careful you use with someone holding a loaded weapon. By the time I reached the school, the parking lot was chaos. Blue lights reflected off minivans, teachers whispered, and someone was crying near the flagpole. But it wasn't her. My 6-year-old, Emily, was gone. And somewhere between the pickup line and my front yard, a woman who called herself the HOA president decided to play God. She had no idea who Emily's father really was. I used to think suburbia was safe. That's why we moved there. The tree-lined streets, the little parks, the HOA newsletters full of potluck invitations and lawn care reminders. It all looked perfect. My name's Daniel Hale. I'm an FBI field agent, 12 years in, mostly domestic counterintelligence. My wife, Lena, teaches 2nd grade, and our daughter, Emily, was 6 years old, all freckles, missing teeth, and pink sneakers with tiny flashing soles. We bought the house on Sycamore Drive 3 summers ago. White picket fence, hydrangeas that never quite bloomed right. It felt like a reset button, a way to give Emily a normal childhood, far from the noise of my job. For a while, it worked. Every morning was the same rhythm. Coffee brewing. Emily singing off-key to some Disney song. Lena packing lunches with those little heart-shaped peanut butter sandwiches Emily loved. I'd kiss them goodbye, holster my badge in the glove compartment instead of my belt, trying to be just Dad, not Agent Hale. On weekends, we'd bike around the neighborhood. I'd race Emily down the cul-de-sac while Lena cheered from the driveway. It was small, ordinary, beautiful, the kind of life people post online to prove they're happy. And for a while, we were. Until she showed up. Marjorie Kent, newly elected president of the Sycamore Heights Homeowners Association. Mid-50s, perfectly pressed blouses, and a smile that never reached her eyes. The first time I met her, she was measuring the distance between our trash bins and the curb, clipboard in one hand, latte in the other. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I'm afraid your bin is about 6 inches too far from regulation placement." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. It should have ended there. A laugh, an apology, a neighborly shrug. But it didn't. Because Marjorie Kent didn't believe in neighborly. She believed in control. It started small. A letter about Emily's chalk drawings on the sidewalk. A fine for leaving our holiday lights up 3 days past January. Then complaints about the noise from Emily's birthday party. A group of 6-year-olds giggling in the yard. Each notice came folded neatly in our mailbox, signed in her perfect cursive, in accordance with HOA Rule 7.3b, President M. Kent. Lena told me to ignore it, but I saw the way Marjorie watched from across the street as standing just beyond the hydrangeas, arms crossed, her little white dog trembling at her feet. There was something off. Too much interest. Too much intensity. I'd dealt with people like her before, controllers, the kind who smile while tightening the leash. Then one night, I caught her in front of our house taking photos. Of the front yard, of Emily's bicycle. When I stepped outside, she jumped. "Oh, just documenting some safety concerns," she said. Her tone was syrupy sweet, but her eyes flicked to my badge, the one I'd accidentally left clipped to my waistband. From that day on, the letters stopped, but the stares didn't. I told myself it was paranoia, occupational hazard. Lena said, "She's just lonely, Daniel." Let it go. And maybe she was right, but a father's gut isn't just instinct, it's alarm. and something inside me whispered that Marjorie Kent wasn't just lonely, she was watching, waiting, planning. I didn't know it then, but that clipboard of hers wasn't about rules. It was about power. And soon, she'd find the one thing she could use to hurt me. The one thing she couldn't have. My daughter. The first real conflict started with a letter taped to our door. It wasn't in an envelope, just a single sheet of thick paper, printed in bold type. Violation notice. Unauthorized structure in front yard. Remove immediately. The structure was Emily's playhouse. A small pink cottage my brother and I built by hand. Plywood walls, tiny windows, a white roof with painted stars. It wasn't hurting anyone. But according to President Kent, it violated HOA Property Uniformity Clause 9.1a. When I called her to discuss it, she answered on the first ring. "Mr. Hale," she said, her tone clipped, "we can't have unsanctioned structures. It affects property values." "It's a children's playhouse, Marjorie," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "My daughter's 6. "I understand," she replied, "but the rules apply equally to everyone." That word, equally, sounded wrong coming from her. There was something smug beneath it, like she'd already won. I took photos, sent them to the HOA board, even pulled the covenants. The rule she quoted didn't exist. 2 days later, another letter arrived, this time accusing us of harassment toward board members. Lena said, "She's baiting you. Don't give her what she wants," so we tried ignoring her. But ignoring Marjorie Kent was like ignoring smoke before the fire. She started showing up at the school bus stop. Always, coincidentally, at pickup time, talking to other parents. Once, I saw her lean down and say something to Emily. When I asked Emily later what she'd said, she shrugged. She just asked if Mommy and Daddy work a lot. My chest tightened. I filed a quiet report, not through the bureau but through the local PD. Just a note in case something went wrong. They brushed it off as neighborly tension. A week later, Emily's bike disappeared. Then the chalk. Then her favorite stuffed bear. The one she always left on the porch swing. Lena thought it was coincidence. I didn't. One night around 10 p.m., I saw movement outside our window. A flashlight beam cut across our lawn. I grabbed my sidearm and stepped out. Nothing, just the hum of the streetlight flickering. But the next morning, there was a single Polaroid taped to our mailbox. Emily, sitting on the school playground, swinging, taken from behind the fence. No note, just the photo. That was when I confronted her. She was in her yard, trimming roses, wearing her pastel cardigan like armor. "You been near my house?" I asked. She didn't flinch, just looked at me over her glasses. "I walk the neighborhood often," she said. "Keeps me active. You taking pictures of my daughter keep you active too." Her eyes didn't even flicker. "Careful, Mr. Hale," she said softly. "Accusing an HOA president of something like that could have consequences." I stepped closer. "You have no idea what kind of consequences I deal with for a living." For a moment, her mask slipped. Her lips tightened. Then she smiled, too wide. "Well," she said, "then you, of all people, should understand procedure." And she walked away. That night, I told Lena everything, showed her the photo. She wanted to call the police again, but we both knew how that would go. No proof, no crime. So we installed cameras, motion lights. I even taught Emily a code word, something she'd use if anyone but us tried to pick her up. The word was Starlight, her favorite song before bed. A few days passed quietly, too quietly. Marjorie stopped walking her dog. The letters stopped coming. Even the neighborhood seemed to exhale. But calm can be camouflage. And when it breaks, it's always sudden. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Lena was at work. I was writing reports at home. The clock said 3:10. The bus would arrive in 5 minutes. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Did you pick up Emily early today?" My stomach dropped. "No," I typed. "Why?" "Her teacher said someone signed her out an hour ago." "They said you requested it." I don't remember leaving the house, just the sound of my own heartbeat, the slam of the car door, the sirens I didn't even turn on. When I reached the school, the front office was chaos. Staff on phones, a crying secretary repeating, "She said she was family." I grabbed the sign-out sheet. One signature. Marjorie Kent. I could barely breathe. The officer on scene looked at me and asked, "Do you know the suspect?" "Yes," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "She's my neighbor." In that instant, everything changed. The woman who measured trash bins and fined us for chalk drawings had taken my child. In broad daylight, from a public school. Every parent's nightmare, my professional training, my instincts, all of it collided. I remember gripping the edge of the desk so hard the wood cracked. "I'm going to find her," I said. The officer started to protest. "Sir, we'll handle this." But I was already gone. And as I sped down Sycamore Drive, my mind kept replaying one thing, that last word I'd taught Emily. Starlight. If she remembered it, she might still be safe. If not, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. And I swear, in that blood-orange light I saw her figure, Marjorie Kent, standing in her driveway, calm as ever, holding something small in her arms. It was pink, and it had lights on its shoes. I slammed the brakes so hard the seatbelt bruised my chest. She was there, standing in the middle of her driveway like she'd been waiting for me. The light caught her hair, that neat gray bun, and the little white dog trembled beside her. Behind her, the blinds in her windows twitched. People were watching. I stepped out of the car, shouting her name. "Where is she?" Marjorie tilted her head, that same empty smile on her face. "Daniel," she said, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "You shouldn't be driving so fast through a residential—" "Where is my daughter?" The air between us went still. Even the cicadas seemed to stop. Then, from behind her, I heard it. The faintest sound. A muffled cry. "Emily?" She flinched, just slightly. That was all I needed. I ran. She screamed something. "You don't understand." But I didn't stop. I barreled through her gate, past the dog, through the sliding glass door that shattered around me. Her house smelled like disinfectant and lavender. Too clean, too staged. "Emily!" I shouted, tearing through rooms, kitchen, hallway, den. No answer. Then I saw it. The basement door. Padlocked. I kicked it once, twice. The wood cracked. On the third hit, it gave way. The air down there was cold, damp. And in the corner, lit by a single bulb, was a folding chair. On it, Emily's pink backpack, her shoes still blinking faintly, but no Emily. Behind me, I heard the metallic click of a safety being pulled back. "Stop," Marjorie's voice said, trembling now. "Please, don't move." I turned slowly. She held a small pistol, shaking in her hands, the barrel nowhere steady. "What did you do?" I said. My voice was low, calm, the way they train us to be when fear wants to take over. "She's safe," Marjorie said quickly. "I'm not a monster." I just needed to talk to her. "Talk," I repeated. "You abducted my daughter from her school." Tears welled in her eyes. She said her mother doesn't let her play outside, that she's always tired, that you yell my pulse spiked. "She's 6, Marjorie. Kids talk. You twisted it." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You don't understand. I lost my own daughter 30 years ago. Car accident. She was 6 too. The system failed me, so I promised, if I ever saw another child being hurt—" She swallowed hard, the gun lowering slightly. I had to protect her. For a second, just one, I saw it. Not a monster, but a broken woman. Grief turned into delusion. And yet, pity didn't erase rage. "Where is she?" I demanded. Marjorie's voice broke. "She's at my sister's house." "Just 2 blocks away. She's fine, I swear." Then came the sound that changed everything. Red and blue light filled the windows. She froze, eyes wide. "You called them," she whispered. "I didn't have to," I said. "They called me." Outside, doors slammed, radios crackled. Officers shouted commands. Marjorie turned toward the window, distracted, and in that split second, I moved. Training kicked in. I lunged, disarmed her, and pinned her wrist to the wall before she could react. The gun clattered across the floor. She screamed, but I didn't hear words, only noise. The next thing I remember was the cold metal of the cuffs, her voice cracking as they read her rights. "I was saving her," she shouted. "You people never save anyone." I wanted to scream back, to tell her she'd taken the one thing I'd sworn to protect. But all I could do was watch as they dragged her out, the woman who'd turned our quiet street into a nightmare. They found Emily 10 minutes later. Safe. Scared. Crying. She'd been left inside a guest bedroom at Marjorie's sister's house, surrounded by toys and coloring books, like a doll in a glass case. When I saw her, she ran straight into my arms, sobbing so hard she hiccuped. "Daddy," she said between breaths. "She said you were mad at me. She said you told her to pick me up." My knees buckled. I held her tighter. "I will never be mad at you, baby. Never." The officers gave us space. One of them, a young guy, probably new, muttered, "Jesus Christ, man. What kind of psycho does that?" I didn't answer. I was too busy memorizing the feel of my daughter's heartbeat against my chest. But the story didn't end there. It couldn't. Because in the days that followed, something strange happened. Neighbors stopped talking to us. The HOA newsletter called it a misunderstanding, and a few even whispered that I'd overreacted. One woman told Lena at the grocery store, "You know, Marjorie just wanted what's best for the community." What's best for the community? My daughter was kidnapped, and somehow, we were the problem. 3 days later, the local news ran the headline, "HO, a president arrested. Claims FBI neighbor abused child." They twisted it. They turned her delusion into speculation, her lies into something worth looking into. An internal affairs officer came to my door the next morning. "We have to follow protocol," he said. "It's standard procedure." Protocol. The same word Marjorie had used before she tried to destroy my life. They suspended me pending investigation. So I sat on my porch watching the same perfect lawns, the same mailboxes, now filled with gossip instead of flowers. People crossed the street to avoid me. Even the sound of the school bus became painful, because every time it hissed to a stop, Emily clung to my arm like I might disappear. The real turning point wasn't the kidnapping, it was what came after. The system I'd served, the bureau, the police, the neighborhood, all of it fractured the second they had to choose between truth and comfort. Marjorie was charged with child endangerment and unlawful restraint, but her lawyer spun the narrative fast. She believed the child was in danger, he said. Her intentions were protective, not malicious. And just like that, sympathy began to shift. At the preliminary hearing, she looked small. Gray cardigan, hands folded, a tearful apology rehearsed to perfection. When the prosecutor asked if she'd kidnapped Emily, she said, "I only took her because no one else would listen." The courtroom murmured, some gasps, some sighs. I sat there, fists clenched, wanting to shout the truth, but the truth doesn't echo the way pity does. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words. I only took her because no one else would listen. I thought about all the people who hadn't listened. The school, when I warned them she was dangerous. The police, when I filed the first report. Even myself, when I ignored my gut. In my mind, I saw that playhouse we'd built, now dismantled, lying in splinters behind our house. A symbol of everything she'd taken from us: safety, normalcy, innocence. And as I sat there in the dark, I realized this wasn't just about one woman. It was about a system that lets monsters wear pearls and call it community service. Then came the envelope. No return address, just a single sheet of paper slid under our door one rainy evening. "She'll be home soon. You can't keep her from me forever." Lena found it first. She screamed. I ran outside. The street was empty. Just rain reflecting the amber glow of the streetlights. That was the moment I understood something chilling. For people like Marjorie Kent, justice wasn't the end. It was the beginning of obsession. She'd been denied once. Now she'd make it her mission to make us pay. And I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a target. Marjorie Kent was released on bail 3 weeks later. 3 weeks. That's how long it took for the system to decide that kidnapping a 6-year-old wasn't a violent crime. They said she was no flight risk. They said she was mentally fragile. They said she just needed supervised counseling. I said nothing, because every time I opened my mouth, I wanted to scream. The night she came home, I saw her porch light flick on again. Same porch, same dog, like nothing had happened, but something had changed. The neighborhood felt colder. Cars slowed down when they passed my house. Someone spray-painted a BUSER on my fence. The bureau called me in. "Daniel, the optics aren't good," my supervisor said. "There's an internal complaint about your behavior. Maybe it's best if you take some leave." As if I hadn't already lost everything that made me feel safe. So I packed up my desk. No badge, no gun, just a hollow ache that didn't fade. Lena tried to hold us together. She baked cookies with Emily. She smiled for her students. But I saw the way her hands shook when the phone rang. Emily stopped sleeping in her room. Every night she climbed into our bed, clutching that same stuffed bear we'd found in Marjorie's basement. Once, half asleep, she whispered, "Daddy, what if she comes back for me?" I didn't have an answer, so I said the only thing I could. "She won't, baby." I promise, but promises are fragile things. 2 nights later, the security camera pinged. Motion detected, 2:43 a.m. I checked the feed. There she was. Marjorie, standing at the edge of our yard, holding a candle, staring straight into the lens. For nearly 2 minutes, she didn't move, just stared. Then she placed something on the ground, a small box, and walked away. I ran outside, barefoot. By the time I reached the curb, she was gone. Inside the box was a note and a locket. The note said, "She called me Mommy once. She will again." And inside the locket, a lock of Emily's hair. Something inside me broke. That careful calm I'd built from years of bureau training, it shattered. I called the police. They logged the incident, took the box, promised to increase patrols, but I saw it in their eyes. They didn't believe she'd do it again. That night, I sat on the porch with my service weapon, the one they hadn't collected yet. Every sound made my pulse jump. Every car that passed made me grip the handle tighter. Lena begged me to come inside. "Daniel, you're scaring her," she whispered, nodding toward the window where Emily watched. But I couldn't move, because if I blinked, if I stopped watching, she'd come back. Days blurred together. I barely ate. Barely slept. I called every contact I had, local, federal, even private investigators. But Marjorie was careful. She never trespassed, never made a direct threat. She lived across the street like an ordinary retiree, watering her plants, waving to neighbors. And everyone wanted to believe her version of the story. The grieving woman misunderstood by the system. The same neighbors who once waved at Emily now looked through us like ghosts. Then came the morning that nearly destroyed me. It was a Thursday. The first day, I'd tried to go back to normal. I'd taken Emily to school myself, walked her right up to the classroom, kissed her forehead. She smiled, brave. "See you after art class, Daddy." I stayed in the parking lot until the bell rang. Then I drove home, feeling for once a little bit of air in my lungs. When I got home, Lena was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her face was pale. "Daniel," she said quietly, "you need to see this." She handed me the screen. A post on the neighborhood Facebook page. Marjorie had written, "Prayers for the Hale family. I hope their little girl finds peace." The timestamp was 8:42 a.m. Emily's class started at 8:45. My blood ran cold. I called the school. No answer. Then another call came through, a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, all I heard was a woman's voice, whispering, "She's with me again, Daniel." Then silence. I ran for the door. The world blurred, the steering wheel slick in my hands, my breath short. Animal. I reached the school before the sirens did. By then, the staff had already locked down. They said Emily had gone missing during a bathroom break. 2 minutes. That's all it took. And in those 2 minutes, my entire world ended. Hours later, the call came in from dispatch. An abandoned car found near the old quarry road. License plate, registered to Marjorie Kent. I was there before anyone else. The sun was setting, sky bleeding orange and violet. The car was empty, door open, engine still warm, and on the front seat, Emily's backpack. Same one from before. Same faint scent of strawberry shampoo. But no Emily. For the next 48 hours, I lived in a nightmare loop. Interviews, search grids, helicopters, news vans. Lena collapsed twice. I didn't cry once, because I couldn't. Crying meant it was real. Then, on the third day, a ranger found her. Not Marjorie. Emily. She was sitting by the edge of a creek 2 miles from the quarry, wrapped in a blanket, shivering, her face blank. When they brought her to me, she didn't say a word. She just pressed her little hand to my chest and whispered, "I said the word, Daddy." "The word?" She nodded. "Starlight. I said it to the lady at the gas station. She called a man with a badge, and that's how they found her. My 6-year-old, scared, shaking, but smart enough to save herself." Marjorie was gone. Vanished. The FBI found her abandoned car, her purse, and her dog, but not her. The last trace of her was a blurry camera shot near the state line, and just like that, she disappeared into the fog. The news moved on. The neighborhood planted new flowers. The HOA quietly replaced her as president. But nothing was the same. Every knock on the door made me tense. Every night I checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times. And every time I tucked Emily in, she asked the same question, "Is she gone forever?" And I had to lie. "Yes, baby. Forever." But she wasn't gone. Not really. Because sometimes late at night I still see the candlelight flicker across her porch, or hear the faint echo of a voice, distant, thin, saying my daughter's name. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear her final whisper on that phone. She's with me again. The week after Emily was found felt like living underwater. Everything sounded distant. People spoke, but words reached me a second too late. The only clear sound was her breathing when she slept, proof that she was still here. They called it the Sycamore Heights kidnapping case. Cameras parked at the end of our driveway. Reporters shouted questions through the rain. Neighbors who'd avoided us now left sympathy cards on the porch, but I could tell the difference between guilt and compassion. Most of them just wanted to be seen caring. Inside, Lena barely spoke. She moved through the house like a ghost, collecting Emily's toys, folding blankets, cleaning surfaces that were already spotless. When I tried to hold her, she stiffened, not out of anger, but exhaustion. We were both running on fumes and fear. The Bureau reinstated me temporarily, not as an agent, but as a consultant on the manhunt. Their words, not mine. They didn't want headlines saying an FBI agent's family had been terrorized under their watch, so they gave me a desk, a laptop, and silence. The task force was small. 3 local detectives, 2 agents, and me. We built timelines, reviewed footage, interviewed everyone who'd ever spoken to Marjorie Kent. Her story didn't make sense. She'd emptied her bank account the morning after her release. She'd booked a rental car under her sister's name. Then she vanished. No cards, no calls, no sightings. The profiler said, "She's obsessive, but not suicidal." She's hiding, waiting for a chance to rewrite the narrative. That line haunted me, because waiting meant she still thought there was something left to win. 6 weeks later, the case reached federal court. Not against her, they hadn't found her, but against the HOA. Turns out they'd ignored multiple complaints about her behavior. One board member admitted under oath that Marjorie had accessed confidential resident files, including ours, without authorization. They'd laughed it off. Now they weren't laughing. I sat in the courtroom as the attorneys argued about bylaws and negligence, about who should have stopped her. But all I heard was the soft whimper of a child sitting behind me, someone else's daughter, and the scrape of Lena's nails against her sleeve. When the judge ruled in our favor, I didn't feel victory, just emptiness. They awarded damages, issued statements, promised reforms. Money doesn't fix the sound of your child crying in her sleep. That night, we went home to a quiet house. The porch light flickered. I'd left it that way on purpose, a small warning to myself. Nothing stays steady forever. Emily was drawing at the kitchen table. When she saw me, she smiled for the first time in weeks. "Daddy, I drew us." She handed me the paper, stick figures holding hands under a sky full of stars. And right there, in crayon, she'd written one word in the corner: Starlight. Something cracked open in me. Not grief, something gentler. A reminder that, even after everything, she still believed in the magic we'd built together. But peace didn't come easily. Some nights the phone rang once, then stopped. No number, no voicemail. Once, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside, a single pressed daisy, no words. The Bureau traced the envelope to a post office 2 states away. No fingerprints, no cameras, nothing. The profiler said, "It's her. Testing boundaries. She wants you to know she's still watching." So we moved. Different county, different school, new names on the mailbox. I installed cameras, alarms, coded locks. But fear has a way of unpacking itself wherever you go. Months passed. Therapy sessions turned into routine. Emily started smiling again. Real smiles, not the practiced ones. She painted stars on her new bedroom ceiling and asked if she could keep them on all night. Lena began to laugh again too, though sometimes it came out like a sigh halfway through. We learned to hold hands without shaking. We learned how to breathe without counting exits. I went back to work, slow at first. Background cases, analysis. Every file I opened, every missing person I logged, I thought about the families behind the names, about how easily they could become us. So I started pushing for change. At first, it was small. A community safety seminar for local HOAs. Then, a proposal to tighten background checks for board members handling resident data. It spread faster than I expected. Within months, local councils started drafting policies. The Hail Initiative, they called it. It wasn't justice, exactly, but it was something. A way to turn pain into structure. To make sure another family never had to face a smiling neighbor who thought control was love. One evening, almost a year later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Blocked ID. When I answered, there was silence. Then a soft, shaky voice. "Mr. Hale." "This is Officer Ramirez, County Sheriff's Department. We think we found her." My breath caught. He continued, "An abandoned cabin near the border. Belongs to her sister's estate. We'll need you to confirm some personal items. When I arrived, the air smelled of pine and old dust." The cabin was small, one room, filled with photographs, all of them of children. School photos, newspaper clippings, drawings. In the center was a single chair, and on it a binder labeled Sycamore Angels. Inside were letters she'd written, unsent, pages of apologies, explanations, delusions. The last page stopped me cold. He'll understand one day. We both lost something the world can't replace. They found her body behind the cabin. Natural causes, exposure most likely. No weapon, no struggle. Just a woman who'd chased ghosts until the forest finally kept her. When they asked if I wanted to keep her letters, I said no. But later, driving home through the rain, I realized something strange. I didn't feel hatred anymore, just pity. Because for the first time I saw her clearly, not as a villain, not as a symbol, but as what grief can do when it goes unhealed. That night, Emily fell asleep early. I stood by her door, watching her chest rise and fall beneath the glow of her plastic stars. And I thought about the promise I'd made, to protect her, no matter what. I couldn't keep the world from breaking, but I could teach her how to survive its cracks. I whispered, "Starlight," just once. She stirred, smiled in her sleep, and whispered back, "I know, Daddy." A year later, the house is quiet again. Not the silence of fear, the kind that used to make every creak feel like a warning, but a gentler kind. The sound of life rebuilding itself. Emily's 7 now. She still sleeps with her stars glowing above her bed, but she doesn't need the hallway light anymore. Sometimes she even reminds me to turn it off. Lena paints again. There's color back in her hands. Blues, yellows, even red. Colors she swore she'd never use again. She says it's her way of reclaiming the spectrum. And me, I finally learned to breathe without listening for sirens. The Bureau offered me a transfer, something quieter, something that didn't come with shadows attached. I said yes. Now I train new recruits. Half of them barely out of college, still believing the badge makes them bulletproof. I start every class the same way. I show them a photo of a pink playhouse and I tell them this: every case you work, every name you write down, someone's whole world hangs on it. Don't let procedure make you deaf. Some of them get it, some don't, but I keep telling it, because stories are anchors. They hold us where truth lives. People ask if I hate her, Marjorie Kent. I used to. Hate kept me awake when sleep felt like surrender, but hate is a strange fuel. It burns clean at first, then starts eating whatever's left of you. So now, when her name crosses my mind, I try to think of what she taught me instead, how fragile control is, how grief can wear the face of righteousness, and how love, real love, doesn't own, it protects. Last month, the County Council passed the Hale Amendment. It requires every HOA to undergo safety training and psychological screening for its officers. Reporters called it a win for suburban reform. For me, it's simpler than that. It's a promise kept. Emily helped me sign the first document. She dotted the I in her name with a tiny star. When she looked up at me, she said, "Does this mean no one else's daddy has to chase bad people anymore?" I told her I hope so. Sometimes when the sky's clear, we drive out past the old quarry road. It's quiet there now, just weighing through the trees and the soft hum of the creek. Emily throws the pebbles into the water, counts the ripples, and asks the questions only children can ask without fear. Why do people hurt each other, Daddy? Do monsters know they're monsters? I never have perfect answers. I tell her the truth instead. Most monsters don't know, sweetheart. They start as people who hurt and never learned how to heal. She nods, the way kids do when they're storing something for later. The house on Sycamore Drive was sold months ago. Sometimes when I drive past it, the new family's porch light glows the way ours used to. They planted new hydrangeas, they're finally blooming. I park for a minute, watch from a distance, and feel something close to peace. In the window, I imagine a little girl waving, a father standing behind her with coffee in hand. They don't know my name, and that's fine. All that matters is that they feel safe. Because safety, I've learned, isn't the absence of danger. It's the presence of love strong enough to fight it. Last week, Emily brought home a school project. Heroes in Our Lives. She wrote about me, but not the FBI part. She wrote, "My dad makes the dark places safe. He taught me that starlight means we can always find our way home." I had to step outside to keep her from seeing me cry. Not because it hurt, but because it healed something I didn't know was still broken. I still keep the locket in my desk drawer, the one they found in Marjorie's box. The hair inside isn't Emily's. DNA tests proved that later. It belonged to her own daughter, the one she lost all those years ago. I don't open it often, but when I do, it reminds me how close sorrow and madness can stand to each other, how easily grief can disguise itself as justice, and it reminds me to keep listening, to my child, to my wife, to the people who whisper instead of scream. Because sometimes the quiet ones are the ones drowning. Tonight, the sky is clear again. Emily's at the window pointing. "Look, Daddy." Starlight. I kneel beside her, trace the constellations she's naming. Her voice is steady, her eyes bright. For the first time in a long time, I believe her when she says we're safe. I whisper the same words I said the night she came home. "You're my light, kiddo." She grins. Always. And if you're listening to this, wherever you are, remember this. Sometimes justice isn't a verdict or a headline. Sometimes it's a child laughing again in the dark. So tell the people you love that you love them. Hold them a little tighter tonight. Because safety isn't a place. It's a promise. Comment below what justice means to you.